Immigration. Everybody's talking about immigration. Well, you got your boy here, the angry moderate, to clear up the confusion. So let's talk about the left for a minute. For years, progressives have treated immigration like it's primarily a moral test. If you ask about limits, you're heartless. If you mention capacity, you're xenophobic. If you talk about enforcement, you're cruel. But here's the reality of the situation. A nation without enforceable boundaries isn't compassionate, it's chaotic. And chaos doesn't help migrants. It destabilizes everyone, especially the working class. If your entire framework is empathy without structure, you're not solving a problem, you're dissolving it. Immigration isn't one problem, it's a stressed system. Right now the debate sounds like this. On one side, invasion. On the other side, compassion. Meanwhile, the system is buffering like bad Wi-Fi. The shift we have to make is we have to stop treating this primarily as a morality crisis. It isn't. Nor is it a criminality crisis. This is a capacity problem. Every system has inputs and limits. If too many people show up at once and processing takes years, you don't get justice or compassion, you get backlog. And backlog creates resentment. You can yell at a router or at a pipe, but if capacity is exceeded, yelling doesn't increase the bandwidth. So before we argue walls versus welcome mats, we need to ask the adult question. What can the system actually process without degrading? Because if you ignore capacity, chaos wins, okay? And the basic problem is both parties are making the same mistake. They're treating illegal immigration like it's one giant emotional blob. It's not. It is 4 different pressures flowing through one pipeline. The right compresses everything into lawlessness. The left compresses everything into human dignity. Both of those are bumper stickers, but systems don't run on bumper stickers. Imagine a hospital emergency room. Someone comes in with a sprained ankle, someone else is having a heart attack, someone else has food poisoning, and someone else walks in because WebMD convinced them they have all 6 rare diseases they just looked up. You don't treat those the same. You triage. You prioritize. Details matter. When you refuse to separate the categories, you end up applying the wrong tool. You build a wall when you need faster courts. You offer blanket sympathy when you need risk prioritization. That's how systems fail. So we separate it. 4 distinct problems, 4 different tools. But before we get to that, we have to first understand really quick the framework, the systems framework. And this systems framework that I'm about to tell you works in every facet of your life, personal and professional. And if you start thinking in systems terms, you're going to be shocked at how you are able to meticulously understand how things work, okay? Every functioning system, whether it's a business, a hospital, a power grid, or your fantasy football league, okay? Everything has 5 elements: inputs, processing capacity, feedback loops, outputs, and failure thresholds. That's at its simplest. That's what we're talking about. So for immigration, the input is migration flow. The processing capacity includes border agents, courts, housing, schools, labor markets. Feedback loops are incentives. And what do I mean by that? If asylum takes 5 years to adjudicate, that's not delay, it's a signal. If employers face minimal penalties for illegal hiring, that's a signal. If enforcement is inconsistent, that's a signal. Systems respond to signals like toddlers respond to cookies, okay? That's feedback. Outputs are integration, removal, backlog, or, as we've seen all too recently, chaos. What's the failure threshold? Well, when cities declare emergencies and voters lose trust, the threshold has been exceeded. You cannot run unlimited input into limited infrastructure. Not at the airport, not at the DMV, not at the border. Once you see it this way, it becomes less ideological and more structural, which is good because structure is solvable. Okay, now let's get to the 4 main problems that we're dealing with. The 4 separate problems we're dealing with. Number 1, illegal border crossings. Okay, this is a flow problem. If 5,000 people show up at a door that can process 500, you don't have a morality debate, you have a bottleneck. The right calls it an invasion. The left calls it inevitable. But systems respond to clarity. Fast adjudication reduces gaming the system. Clear enforcement reduces ambiguity. Expanded legal pathways reduce pressure on that bottleneck. You don't solve the bottleneck by arguing about whether water is morally good or bad. You widen the pipe or you reduce the flow, or preferably both. Second problem, illegal immigrants who commit crime. This is a risk problem, not a volume problem. Immigrants commit less violent crime statistically, that's true. Annual violent crime conviction rates for undocumented immigrants tend to fall around 0.1%. Native-born violent crime rates are typically double this number. Now, this doesn't mean violent crime doesn't occur. It means the share of illegals committing violent crime is a small fraction of the total illegal immigrant population. But when someone is here illegally and commits a serious crime, public trust drops fast. The right exaggerates this category. The left downplays it. Systems thinking says remove high-risk nodes first. Prioritize violent and repeat offenders. Full stop. Improve data sharing. Protect public safety. Because if people don't feel safe, no other reform survives politically. Okay. Number 3, illegal immigrants who contribute. Now we get to a part that starts to get interesting. Millions are working, paying taxes, raising families. 3/4 of illegal immigrants of working age are working and paying taxes in the U.S., which is about 8 million people here in 2025. And in 2025, they paid nearly $80 billion in federal, state, and Social Security taxes. And as far as the Social Security taxes go, they're paying into a system for which they will never collect benefits, okay? They're politically invisible, but economically essential. The right says, well, illegal's illegal. The left says, well, they contribute. Both of those are half arguments. Leaving productive workers in legal limbo weakens stability. Shadow participation creates ambiguity, which creates instability. Okay? The system's thinking move is to conditionalize legalization, background checks, civic benchmarks, formalize what's already functioning and working. Because mass removal would shock the economy, and suddenly, strawberries cost $12 and everybody becomes an economist, okay? The 4th problem that we have is the most difficult and intractable, I think. These are illegal immigrants who don't contribute. This is the hardest category. Not criminals, but not contributing meaningfully either. This is a reciprocity problem. When individuals consume system resources but do not contribute back, whether through work, taxes, or civic participation, strain increases. Now, let's be precise for a second. Not contributing does not mean automatically that there's a moral failure. There may be barriers, language, documentation, skill mismatch, trauma, childcare constraints, who knows. But from a systems perspective, prolonged non-contribution creates an imbalance. Now, the right lumps this group in with criminals, okay? That's the wrong thing to do. The left treats contribution expectations as cruelty. That's also wrong. They both miss the system's point. If someone is willing to participate in the system should help them do so. If someone refuses participation indefinitely, Well, then the system has to decide whether their presence aligns with capacity constraints. And if not, they have to go. This isn't about hostility. It's about sustainability. Set clear expectations. Create work incentives. Okay? Tie legal normalization to participation. Compassion and reciprocity are not opposites. They're design features. Here's the uncomfortable truth the progressives are going to need to face up to. Compassion without capacity collapses. Open-ended intake without processing speed creates backlog. Backlog creates resentment. And resentment fuels the very backlash you claim to oppose. If you want humane immigration policy, you have to defend clear rules. If you want generosity, you have to respect the limits, because sustainable compassion requires structure. And if the left wants credibility on immigration, it has to stop pretending boundaries are immoral. They're not. They're functional. And functioning systems are what protect vulnerable people in the long run. Okay? So let's sum this all up with the Halcyon systems position. Differentiate the categories. Okay? Match intake to capacity. Prioritize public safety. Stabilize productive contributors. And define clear contribution standards for those who are not contributing. Align those incentives. That's it. That's it. No theatrics. No moral panic. No utopian fantasy. If the pipe is overflowing, stop yelling at the water, turn the valve. Okay? Increase throughput, reduce pressure. Because the real enemy here isn't immigration, it's dysfunction. And dysfunction thrives when we argue about feelings instead of managing systems. Boring systems are stable systems. And honestly, boring sounds pretty fucking great right about now.